Finally, major Mythic Plus changes coming in 11.1. Faith restored? I don't know. I sure hope so. I don't like being a negative Nancy. I don't like bitching all the time. I don't. I love playing WoW. That's why I still play it. But Mythic Plus just isn't my favorite right now. It's not. And I think it can be again. If Blizzard puts in the right changes, they do the right things, they get shit straight, hopefully Season 2 will be much better, and Season 1 will just be an aberration of shit that we had to deal with to get to Season 2. Let's see what Marcellian has to say about how Blizzard is fixing Mythic Plus.
Hey, so we finally have major changes for Mythic Plus in 11.1, and the faith has been restored.
Wow, that dude got one-shotted, man. How the fuck?
This is how it is.
Holy balls.
Yeah, look at the healer's health. Look at the tank's health. Look at everybody just almost dying constantly. This is not fun.
Holy shit.
In the void. There is actually a looming question mark over this entire statement because the video we wanted to do on the topic and the video we ended up doing are not the same. What am I talking about? Earlier this week, we have had a major blue post from the dev team about the state of Mythic Plus in Season 2, and prior to that, Ian Azakostis was interviewed by PC Gamer with the prominent topic discussed being the lack of fun in Mythic Plus.
Yeah.
Ian essentially recognized there is a problem with Mythic Plus design when players don't find it fun because we don't. Following that, the blue post...
One thing I will say that I didn't like about the Ian interview with PC Mag is he kind of blamed Delves a little bit for the player drop-off in Mythic Plus. And the truth is, I think the majority of players would rather do Mythic Plus. It's not that Delves have taken away everybody from Mythic Plus. All Delves did was they gave people an outlet to go to if Mythic Plus was shitty. So the Mythic Plus was shitty, so people did Delves more just to be able to get the gear still. Right? That's why players, are just looking for a place to get gear at the end of the day. And if the thing they're doing is no longer fun, they'll go do something else. They also followed the path of least resistance, and Delves was just a way easier path to get gear than Mythic Plus was at the time. But if Mythic Plus was fun and rewarding and constructed correctly, I don't think Delves would have affected Mythic Plus really in any way.
Doubles down on some of the best news we have heard about Mythic Plus in probably a year. So let's see why there is hope for Season 2 to be maybe the best season of Mythic Plus so far. Mythic Plus in the War Within has many issues, at least in our humble opinion. The issues would be the reward system, the depletion system, the tank situation, the healer situation, the many casts that can only be stopped by interrupt, the crazy amount of mechanics for each pack, and the meta specs problem.
Every time this video comes up or some video about Mythic Plus comes up, there's people in the comments who are like, why Samo is bitching about tanks? It's because we got nerfed into the fucking ground. Okay, there's nothing fun about being a squishy tank. The whole reason why you play tank is to not be squishy. And right now, we are very much a squishy little problem that we need healers all the time to keep us alive. And we basically have nothing good going for us. We don't do a lot of damage. We get fucked up really easily. And we're just an aggro stick that's hoping to be kept alive by the healers. So yes, tanking does suck right now. Key depletion's a big problem. They Blizzard came out with the whole, well, plus 12 keys won't deplete anymore. Who the fuck's doing a plus 12 key? I'd like to know the percentage of players that actually benefits. I guarantee you it's like 2%, 1%. You got 50% of the player base not even doing a plus 2. How many do you think are doing a fucking plus 12? So I don't get what that whole fix was about. Why are they trying to fix something for them, a 1% of the player base? That whole key depletion thing just needs to go away. And if you want your key to go down, you can go to the vendor and drop it yourself. Otherwise, key depletion shouldn't be a thing anymore. It would create a less toxic environment. It would allow more people to get invited because people wouldn't be afraid of their keys breaking. And it would just create an overall better atmosphere for Mythic Plus.
More, but these are issues that only started to crop up in the last season,
get your face
with some bearing their fangs earlier, like the meta revolving around Augmentation Evoker. If you have been out of the loop in the last few months, know that a few of these have been fixed, which already saw big improvements for Mythic Plus now, and a few big ones announced for Season 2 that made everyone excited, and some still left with question marks for the future. What has been resolved has been partially the reward system, where we actually get a decent amount of crests for a dungeon run, whether it is timed or not. This ties
That's
into
good.
a more deeper psychological problem. The dungeons being hard is not inherently bad, but having drastically lower rewards only served to exacerbate the issue. People are willing to put up with a lot of shit so long as they are getting paid for it. Outside quite a few buffs and nerfs to specs that would look towards solving some meta issues, that's all we've got so far. Season 2 bringing the real changes, supposedly. First
Sam,
thing
do
that
a
you
plus
may
11.
have
I've never done
heard
plus
about to compound with the tuning changes was that
I did, actually, I take that back. I did plus 20s in the Dragonflight Season 3, which was the best season of, Mythic Plus ever.
Augmentation can no longer buff tanks and healers. This is a big change to bring Aug in line with other specs, where it can offer more DPS focused benefits to a party, it occupying a DPS role and all, instead of just more abstract benefits like survivability, utility, dispels and such. Condensing the value of the spec to bring DPS output benefits can make it easier to be weighed against other DPS specs as a DPS spec instead of a very unique spec that essentially boosts the survivability of tanks, something no other spec can do, and provide additional crucial dispels to...
Well, but they don't, doesn't augmentation not affect tanks or healers anymore? So it's not, this is not really the case? Isn't that true? Yeah, but you didn't do plus 24s. No, but I did plus 20, and I understand that was pre-scaling. They rescaled everything. So wouldn't a 20 have been a 10? Wouldn't a 20 have been equivalent to what a 10 is today? 20s were easy as fuck. They were 10s, basically, because everything got scaled down.
Curses, poisons, diseases, and bleeds, something only evokers can do, but due to the nature of augmentation, you would be an unironical fool to consider taking any other evoker spec, just to name a few. It's too early to tell if this will turn Aug from a locked-in spot, no matter what the party composition is, to just another DPS spec. But it's definitely a step in the right direction for the moment. The second best thing was the announcement of tank busters being tuned down, where now we delve deeper into the tank situation. Tanks are at this point the rarest and hardest role to fill within a group, although this can differ from...
Wow, look at this man speaking truths. Everyone always talking shit about me, saying I don't know how to fucking play the game. I played the hardest damn role in the game. I'm a blood DK. What are you talking about? The skill is unwavering. Unbelievable skill. You guys are lucky enough to witness it every day.
Person to person, for me, it's the lack of fun and rewarding gameplay that is the result of too many punishing mechanics for my group that I cannot do anything about, which normally stop me from pulling large packs, but also the incredible brutal damage intake I have from seemingly random mobs, with tank busters being in almost every other pack. I am a self-proclaimed tank enthusiast, and by that I mean I normally end up tanking in keys more than any other role, and this expansion has been the first time in 20 years of World of Warcraft when I genuinely disliked tanking for all the reasons stated above, coupled with very little changes, improvements, or reworks done to the tank specs to keep up with modern WoW combat and class design.
I don't know, like the way I can describe the current state of tanking to somebody who's never tanked before, it's like the fun part about tanking a lot of times was when you survive those big moments, right? Like you've pulled a bunch of shit, something goes down and you're supposed to get killed, but you somehow manage to survive it by popping off the right, shit, getting your cooldowns lined up perfectly, and you get through it and you kill it, right? That's the badass moment. That was the fun part about it. That doesn't exist anymore. You're not surviving shit, okay? You're going to die no matter what you do, no matter how perfect you play it, you're dead, okay? The equivalent to that for somebody who plays DPS, I guess, would be like, you know that feeling when you pop all your cooldowns perfectly and your DPS line on that chart just flies off the fucking meter and your top DPS because it's all lining up perfectly? Imagine Blizzard took that away. Imagine Blizzard said, you know what? DPSing just should be like everybody's in line perfectly. No matter what you do, all the DPS is going to be perfect. This way, no toxicity. Everyone's going to be the same. So when you do that thing where you popped off everything perfectly and you got all your cooldowns lined up and everything, you know what that does? Absolutely fucking nothing. How do you feel about playing DPS now? How rewarding does it feel to play DPS now? Now that basically everything you do has no effect on the end game because you're not going to have that heroic moment. You're just going to be another Andy like everybody else. Same with healing. That's what they did to tanks. They fucking neutered us. They took away our glorious heroic moments, and now we're just squishy little bitches. And I'm bitching.
design. Are you telling me Arcane Mage got about 3 reworks in beta, 2 major talent and playstyle changes during the first 2 months of the patch, and another one announced for patch 11.1, and the tanks got fewer changes between the whole lot of them in the last few years? Well, guess what then? I'm not tanking anymore. And who cares what I'm doing? Well, you might, because I'm not the only tank that stopped playing, since clearly these issues are not isolated.
He's right.
It's only one individual, hence why we can never seem to find tanks, because unsurprisingly, not everyone wants to play a prot paladin. Tank bossers being nerfed and relegated to rare and specific mobs is definitely a good thing.
Yeah.
But it has to be followed by more. The third major change coming next season affects the prot paladin problem, the melee meta class, and honestly a lot more, since this ties into most of the issues in the current season.
See, I guess Blizzard has 2 different teams working this shit. Because they did the right thing in raiding and they're doing the wrong thing in Mythic Plus. Because in raiding, Ian Hazzikostas himself said, we want to take the approach where we're no longer just nerfing the raid so people can get the shit done. We want to take the approach where we're buffing the players instead. That's why that whole new Renown track's out. That's why in the current raid, we have that little, buff me, I loot 2 things off the boss, and you get 16 of them, you turn them in, you get another buff. That's why this whole buff the players thing is going on in raiding. I don't get why in Mythic Plus, they're still doing the old raiding style approach where they're like, oh, tanks are getting killed, let's nerf the tank busters. The fuck? No. Buff the tanks. You don't gotta nerf the content, just buff the fucking player. That feels better to the player. The player's more happy when they read a blue post that says, your class just got buffed by X percentage, rather than, Mecha Dildo boss in the Mechagon raid just got nerfed. His dildo attack now does 30% less damage. What the fuck? No. Take a note from the raid team. The raiders got it right. Right now, raiding is in a pretty good spot. You want to buff the player, not nerf the content. Okay?
Pacing of combat will be slowed down to allow people to better coordinate
mechanics.
This was approached from the perspective of casting spells of mobs, which once prot paladin in almost every group for the amount of interrupts that it can do, and also melee DPS for the faster interrupt cooldowns that they have. The general cast time of dangerous spells has been increased first of all. This will give people more time to respond and have a kick ready. Longer cast times also means overall fewer casts, since they numerically occupy a larger portion of the dungeon timer. Secondly, they, and I quote, removed, simplified, or slowed the casts of others. Spells, I assume. This is a big step, especially if you think of a generic pack in a dungeon that currently has 2 to 3 spells it cycles through, one usually being the big thing that will kill the group, the other being a debuff of some sorts, and the third being the filler bolt that, god damn it, seems to always do so much damage. Because casts can only be stopped by interrupts, you will save interrupts usually for the big dangerous casts and attempt to delay the rest of them with stuns and other forms of CCs, which ends up putting the entire group's utility kit on cooldown every pack. This has been a bit too much, too involved, and too exhausting. The change is good, and similar to the tank one, still a bit incomplete.
I'd rather see buffs than
However,
nerfs.
if we end up with fewer casts overall, maybe we won't need them to be interrupted by stuns and knockbacks anymore. And to showcase these good changes, you can watch the new dungeon they released that we also covered in a video the other day. Operation Floodgate has significantly fewer casts to stop, and maybe it's just me, but there are more mobs that can be crowd controlled to potentially stop other casts as well. A usual 1 to 2 pack pools in Floodgate has about 2 mechanics you want to account for, like the architect pools that have the nailed root mechanic they spam, while another mob fires a fire beam that chases you and leaves puddles on the ground. Outside of these are just regular auto attacks and dynamite casts that the healer has to heal through, leaving the 8 mob pool to have 4 mechanics between the lot of them. That averages at about 1 mechanic for 2 mobs. Compare this to only 1 pack in Grimbatol, where the giant has a big tank buster and a heavy AoE burst that ideally people use defensives for, and 3 beguilers that each have a channel stop.
It's a mini raid boss. These fucking guys are mini raid bosses. Who wanted this? Who the hell wanted this shit? I don't remember this being a thing in Dragonflight. Why did it become a thing now where all of a sudden there's like these mini boss polls that are like mini raid bosses with 13 different mechanics? What? How is that fun?
on a player.
You know what's fun? Mob pulling 30 guys at once and just destroying them. That's fun.
A Shadow Bolt or Shadow Flame Bolt cast that chunks 30 to 40% of a player's HP in one go that they continuously cast until you interrupt them, giving you a 3 seconds breathing window if you end up doing it. That's 4 mobs with 8 mechanics, averaging at 2 mechanics per mob. So that's essentially 4 times more things you need to do to safely approach the pack. You might not think this is much, but it will add up over the course of a dungeon, and I'm not even going to go into the Warlock, Enforcers, and Ascended Shaman packs that followed this deeper into the dungeon. I'm all for a challenge, but if Season 1 proved anything is that more isn't better, and more can be challenging but also very exhausting to the point where players might just be that exhausted. So they end up quitting and leaving us with 30 to 45 minute queues for a Mythic Plus key. These changes alone give us hope for Season 2, and Floodgate has been the best dungeon we managed to test in only the first week, when 5 months of beta testing for the expansion yielded us with way worse sessions. And now we get to this week's PTR. If you are watching this video, chances are you might have seen other videos or streams of people playing these dungeons, or even caught us live doing it as well. Man, oh man, are we ever in doubt about what the hell is going on with these dungeons. Rank 1 players attempting a +10, getting to the second boss of Rookery with no time left and 60 deaths on the counter is really smashing that X'd out button right about now. We played these dungeons on the War Within beta on Mythic difficulty when they were available, and again recently as a +10 where we normally clear 11s and 12s. And
I will say on a positive note, these new swirls are fantastic. These are good animations. Good animation.
We could barely get to the first boss. Bugs, one-shots, and healers having to hold their breaths to make sure not one wrong cast is going out or the entire party is dead hardly exemplifies the earlier design announcement that we were all excited for. It's probably fake. The PTR build we are playing has been delayed for 2 days this week, during which time Plunderstorm also launched to a rough start. Maybe the servers had issues. Maybe patching was problematic. Maybe
the servers are fucking broken right now. I don't know what's going on. But overall, I just think that they just need to, you know, rework how they're working this. He said, Moishi says, I have tanked for 3 years now, but I'm quitting because I'm over it. Why should I do 4x the effort when I can just chill and just DPS and have fun? It's true. It's true. I used to DPS. I've been tanking now for 4 expansions, but this is the first, and I was always willing to tank because to me it was more enjoyable. Like I liked the added kind of pressure. I liked the added, you know, a little bit more responsibility. Also the fact that you're a tank, you're kind of glorified in the group, like you're the leader, basically default leader of the group. I enjoyed that. You know, it strokes my ego a little bit. But this season, for the first time, I'm like, yeah, I do wish I was a DPS. I do. I wish I was a DPS and I could just sit back and just parse my dick off and worry about 1 or 2 mechanics and that's it. But as a tank, I got to worry about so much more, and it's just not like the benefits are no longer outweighing the shittiness, that added responsibility. That's how I feel. Sam, I'm sure you already forgot about this, but DPS had the tank treatment back in BFA. They nerfed the shit out of DPS, hard capping most AoE abilities. I do remember the hard caps on AoE. I do. But I'm sure DPS complained back then. Now it's just our turn to complain. I just don't get why they don't learn their lesson about this stuff. Why? Why'd you nerf us, Blizzard?
Storm made it harder to get the PTR.
And Monarch, the problem is there's always going to be people who play DPS, like whether it's nerfed or not. For tanking, it's in a dire state because people will just stop tanking. They'll just go do something else. So now you got an even bigger problem where there's only a few tanks left. And basically, the only people still tanking out there are big dick players like me. You know, look at me. Glorious. Look at that. Come on.
PTR build up, which is confusing as to how one is.
Yeah, but there's a tank shortage right now.
After
big time.
2 days of announced testing being postponed, one would expect we would get to sink our teeth into all the juicy announcements they had for us. Well, clearly that didn't happen, and what's even more disappointing is that likely this PTR version is older than what they are working on at the moment, older than the announced changes they had for the tank busters and casts, considering I died in Priory in 0.3 seconds from taking 16 million damage in spell casts. This is not what we were told. Either the changes they have announced haven't been implemented, or they have, and this is their take on...
They haven't. They haven't. So I'm gonna play on Blizzard's side here. They haven't been implemented. Ian said it himself. He said it himself in the interview. He said we have changes that currently have not that are gonna be implemented that we're working on that have not been implemented on the PTR yet, and we're hoping to get them in soon so players can test them so we can get feedback. So there are changes coming, and the changes they've talked about really haven't happened yet. I'm hoping they're gonna be worth it. I'm hoping they're gonna be worthy. I can't stand tanking anymore, and I'm a prop pally. Shit, you're the best tank there is right now. And you can't stand it. Imagine everyone else, or you're just getting dick slapped.
Slowing down the combat for more coordination, and tanks need to die less to spike damage. Whichever the case, considering PTR testers are unpaid QA employees that test stuff out of their own goodwill and free time, with the exception of content creators, of course, this whole situation we have right now seems in very poor taste and generally very disrespectful to the time of the players, now stuck in a whole week with a broken PTR, unable to properly test and feedback to make sure the game we like and the devs apparently want to make is going to be fun. Or maybe we just need to get good. But as a Romanian...
Yeah, that's what it is. Get good. Yep. I usually disagree with what Sam says, but he's 100% right. Tanking sucks. Yeah, wow. Look, I mean, Moishi's agreeing with me. This is like either the end times or I'm right. It must be one or the other. Yeah, I don't mind tanking. It's fun. It is fun when it's good. It's not fun. If you go do a +9 right now, I promise you it is not going to be fun. It is not going to be fun.
Saying goes, hope dies last, and there is hope. The marksmanship rework being one, which you can check in our video here. The changes to the spec, how it plays with its procs, the synergies and burst damage has been some of the most fun I have had on the PTR.
I enjoy challenges and trying to out DPS the DPS. Yeah. Sure, I mean, go for that. But for me, tanking was never about DPS. It was about survivability. It was about leadership. It was about understanding mechanics and knowing when to mitigate properly to have the heroic moments where you're the last standing survivor and you get the shit done. And that moment doesn't exist anymore. Blizzard saw me sleeping, reached into my pants, and ripped out any joy I still had. That's what happened with tanking this season. And I hope it gets restored. Could. I have hope. You know, call me foolish. I don't know. I feel like they fixed rating for the most part, and I feel like they can do the same with Mythic Plus. Just stop nerfing content. Understand the real problem is going to be solved by buffing the players. That's it. Just buff the damn players, okay? Buff tanking again, make things good again, and everything will be okay. Good video from Marcellian.